Welcome to the Spirit of Truth video podcast. Joining us today is Chuck Thurston again. We invited him back here because he's so awesome and so intelligent. But today we're going to get down on the whole Spirit of Truth. So stick around with us. It's going to be fun. Welcome back. Joining us today is my good friend, Chuck Thurston. Welcome, Chuck.
Hey, Derek.
It's great
good to be here again.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you back. The first repeat guest, but your value is off the charts. So you're always my first go-to guy to invite here.
Cool. Well, it's great to hear that.
Yeah.
For me, we're just continuing our conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I look forward to the fact that you and I will get to continue our conversations for eternity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And that warms my heart, man.
Yeah. Discovering greater and greater dimensions of reality.
Yeah. So let's do this.
Service and love.
Let's do this. Let's continue that conversation.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Spirit of Truth then.
So last time we touched on the Spirit of Truth a bit.
Right.
And it's the name of the podcast, right?
So it's fitting.
So it's obviously an important topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that maybe a lot of people necessarily even understand exactly what it is. I mean, I certainly didn't before I began studying the URANTIA book.
Yeah, just a little background. You know, I had a Catholic background.
Okay.
In the book of John, it does speak about
mentioned.
About a new teacher that he will send as Jesus speaking, I will go back to my Father, but I will send a new teacher.
Exactly.
That will not speak of himself, but will speak of that which is to come.
Exactly. And of Jesus.
And as the teacher of Jesus being the teacher essentially here for us.
Exactly. So it's amazing that John got that, because his is really the only gospel that mentions that. And this all came up in Jesus's discourse after the Last Supper. Right. You know, and he's like, okay, this is what's coming.
Kind of the farewell.
This is what's coming. Yeah, he's trying to prepare his apostles for what's to come. And he'd warned them, and he'd let them know that he was going to very likely be arrested and put to death. So his physical continuation on the planet was, about to come to an end. But he wanted to assure them that they would not be alone, that he would send his presence into the world to be with them. Right. Each one individually.
Thank God.
Yes. And that also applies to all of us who seek his presence. He's there for us.
So the seeking is really important here, right?
Well, it's really interesting how Jesus put this. It's so beautifully poetic. You know, what he said is, I stand at the door and knock, and for anyone who will open, I will come in. So the thing that's so intriguing to me about that is that we have to take some initiative. Like, he's there, he even knocks on the door. He lets, his presence becomes known.
He comes as far as he possibly can.
He comes right to the threshold of our home. Right. Of our mind, and literally of our home, and knocks. But it's up to us to open the door and let him in. So of all the spiritual influences that have been gifted to us to help us to grow and spiritually, this is the one that requires initiative on our part. So with the thought adjuster, we make a moral decision at a young age, and it pretty much automatically, the thought adjuster comes to dwell with us. Mm-hmm. We don't have to ask for that specifically. It's gifted. And the Holy Spirit, which is the third of the three main spirit circuits that support us in our spiritual development, that comes even before the thought adjuster. Right. Once we discover wisdom and worship, which the URANTIA book refers to as adjutant spirits, once we achieve as a young child those levels of development, of just our mind development. I mean, the human mind is designed to receive that encircuitment. Right. But once those necessary decisions are actually made, then the Holy Spirit kicks in. And the Holy Spirit then sort of trains us to the level where then we can receive the Spirit of the Father. So we receive the Spirit of the Mother first, and then that prepares us to receive the Spirit of the Father, which is the thought adjuster that dwells within us. And then we're given the opportunity of inviting Spirit of the Son into our lives, which is the Spirit of truth.
So for like a mental picture for people at home who maybe don't understand what that looks like, it's kind of like a threefold process.
It's a threefold spirit endowment. What do they call it? Threefold spirit endowment. That's what they call it in one of the papers. The Spirit of the Father, the thought adjuster, the Spirit of the Son, the Spirit of truth, and the Spirit of the Spirit, which is the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So this is a threefold ministry that goes back to the Trinity in pattern. There's this master pattern in the manifestation of reality. The deity is primary expression of deity is in a threefold relationship. So as many of your other guests have talked about, and maybe we even talked about last time, is the significance of relationships. The universe, the value of our existence in the universe is all derived from relationships. Yeah. We discover spiritual value in relationships. Yeah. And our relationships to deity are primary in that discovery, in that process, in that growth. So then we can bring that to our other relationships, like with our human brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I mean, just that process of kind of opening up and inviting the Spirit of truth. I mean, like, I don't know if a lot of people know at home. I mean, like, we always pray before this show. We always invite the Spirit of truth to come in and thank God the Father for what we have and for our opportunities. And it's that opening the door for them, right? Inviting them in. Yes. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in this intellectual construct of it's just functionality and not the intimate, loving intimacy, the sincerity that goes on in relationship that you can only have in relationship.
Exactly. And that kind of brings up, to me, a very intriguing, but maybe also kind of difficult aspect of all of this is what we're talking about here is having real relationships with invisible presence, right? I mean, you just talk about God in general. We talk about prayer, the idea of talking to God, right? So you're having a conversation, you're talking, you through faith, you develop the capacity to feel the presence of this invisible personality who is actually with us all the time. Right. And I think that's a stretch. I mean, it's a stretch of faith.
It is.
First of all, just to accept that that's even possible, right? Or that such a thing even exists. Right. From a purely materialistic point of view, the idea that we're ministered to and we share reality with invisible personalities.
Beings, yeah.
Yeah, and not just deity, but angels and all kinds of beings. That understanding of reality is a big leap. It's a big leap for someone who's never thought about that.
Yeah, it's almost going from 0 to 60 right away. Like if you don't have a platform that is kind of a foundational understanding, then it's not really sustainable growth.
Yeah. Right. So in Christianity, I mean, I grew up marginally Christian. My parents were more kind of more into science and stuff like that. But at least I had some exposure to the idea of like angels. I had no clue what they might be, but at least I was familiar with the term. Right. And there's popular movies like the Clarence. What's
oh yeah.
What's the name of that movie?
Christmas Story Carol or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, well, it's a different one. Anyway, but there's in the movies, you get some idea of there might be these helper beings who are watching over us, right?
Right.
And that combined with the idea of God, I was clueless about God. I had no idea about God, but I was very intrigued. I was very interested. Like, okay, what is God? What does this word even mean, right? So it's very interesting. It's the beginning, right at the beginning of the URANTIA book. In the foreword, the authors say that there's great confusion about the meaning of such terms as God and deity, etc. And in one of the opening paragraphs, they say, I'll just read a couple lines here. They say, this is from the foreword. They say, we're fully cognizant of the difficulties of our assignment. So the URANTIA book being their assignment being to reveal to us the existence of realities that we can't discover on our own.
That's easy.
But anyway,
just kidding.
That's kind of the nature of revelation. Some things have to be revealed to us.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot we can discover on our own. We can discover a lot through science. We can figure out a lot of things through philosophy and so forth. But there are certain realities that really have to be revealed. Sure. Otherwise, we'll never discover them.
Sure,
they're beyond our human capacity to discover. But once they've been revealed, then we can experience them.
Okay.
Then they can become real.
They can be known.
Become real in our consciousness, become real in our experience. And that's really the gift of revelation. So the higher beings that sort of administer our reality and are overseeing the development of the planet and in our lives individually, they know and understand this and realize this. So revelations have been provided to this planet over many, many
millennia.
Hundreds of thousands of years, even.
Yeah.
And some have gone better than others.
Only a few.
Right. But Jesus, of course, was a major revelation. Right. And his revelation was that God is like our Father, and we are sons and daughters. That we are literally the sons and daughters of God.
Right.
So that sounds so simple.
It sounds so simple, but that revelation that he brought was adding on, like you were saying you were speaking to, is that, like Melchizedek brought in that revelation of, yes, there's one God. Uh-huh. And then Jesus is like, okay, I'm going to add on to that. That one God that he's really awesome. He loves you and he loves everybody else equally.
And faith. Melchizedek taught faith.
Melchizedek did teach salvation through faith.
Over sacrifice.
Yes.
Right.
So faith is better than sacrifice, everyone. Just so you know that.
But then Jesus made it all just so much more personal.
Right.
Because not only did he teach this concept, this idea that we're children, sons and daughters of God, but that he himself is a divine son of that same God, a paradise son.
Right.
So that he represents, in other words, we can discover the Father through Jesus. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Mm-hmm. And just before going on too far with this, there's Father deity and there's also Mother deity. And they're different.
Right.
It's not like it's just all mushed together. Like there's Father deity, there's Mother deity, and then there's also what we could call like sibling deity or associative deity or, sonship deity, like the deity of Jesus.
Right.
So all three have a role to play, just like in a human family, in sort of the classic pattern. You have a different relationship with your father than you have with your mother.
Sure.
Your mother provides certain things and the father provides other things, right?
Absolutely.
It's like a typical example of that is that fathers like to throw their babies up in the air and catch them, right?
I don't know why I'm laughing.
And then the baby will go, ah, and then they'll land in the father's arms, look in the father's eyes and realize they're safe.
Yeah.
And that's like a profound experience.
Yeah, it's thrill is scared, but I'm safe now in your arms.
Rarely will you see a mother do that.
Yeah, they're not going to risk it.
Right?
Yeah.
With the mother, there's this bonding, this sort of bonding from being in the womb, from being actually physically attached for so long, right? And that continues even after birth. Mm-hmm. And that leads to a different quality of relationship as the child grows. So the infant knows the mother from the very beginning. There's never been a time when the infant hasn't been even literally attached to the mother, right? But the father, on the other hand, of the baby is like over there somewhere. The child has to discover the father. And the infant doesn't even know who the father is, right?
Right.
So that relationship has to be established through initiative, and it has to grow and develop based on the love of the father for the child.
Yeah.
So the child begins to recognize the love that is coming from this other person that's not their mother.
Right.
So they receive the love of the mother almost in this physically bonded kind of way, but they receive the love of the father as another person like themselves. So that's a huge discovery for the infant.
Yeah, and for all of us. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're right. So that's kind of so it's kind of the same in the universe. Like we sort of live in the womb of the mother.
Right.
The mother spirit of our local universe actually creates physical reality, and her presence permeates.
And literally integrated into the adjutants.
She gives us our minds. Mm-hmm. That are circuited through her. And then, at least they say, that her presence is literally distributed throughout the local universe. It's not like with Michael, our creator son, where he can only be in one place at a time.
Right.
His personal presence is always focalized where he physically is in space.
Right.
Whereas with the mother, it's more like the mother's body
is all over.
Right. If you think about it, you can be simultaneously aware of your little toe and your little finger, like at the same time, right?
Sure.
Right.
Sure. So, I'm doing that right now, actually.
Right. So the whole local universe is kind of like that.
Yeah.
She's simultaneously aware of all of it. Mm. So what's so wonderful about that in terms of our relationship with her is that she can know and feel our presence. Her presence permeates us. It contains our experience.
And I like that the URANTIA book says that she can be known by us.
And she can be known.
Well.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's knowable. Right. So her Holy Spirit is the first real spirit gift. The real first spirit ministry that's gifted to us. Okay. And then the spirit of the Father, and then the spirit of the Son. So they say that the ministry of deity is unified. It's all one in a sense. But then they go on to map it out how it has all these different modes and dimensions. Well,
that's a complicated thing for your average person to break down. I mean, even if you look at the Abrahamic religions, there's a serious challenge in breaking down the Trinity for these people.
Right. Yeah, but if you think about it, it's really crucial and important because it means that deity is within the Trinity. Deity has relationships with deity equals, which means that the deity within the Trinity, this is a deity that has relationships.
Right.
It's not an isolated. That's the problem with the strict, pure monotheistic kind of concept of God, because it posits a God who does not have relationships with deity equals. So we're always kind of, any other being in the universe is always like one level down or one step down. Right. Whereas within the Trinity, you have God, you have the Father, the Son, the Spirit, however you map that out, having relationships as deity equals. So they're already practiced in having relationships.
Right.
And they know, and these are loving relationships. Yeah. So then those relationships can be extended to all of the creatures, all of their creation.
Yeah.
They come into being.
Well, I feel like that's the revelation, is that these relationships are loving. Yes. Because we've come up for a millennium of this notion that God's this judge. There's no one who's going to be near him in as far as judgment. Mm-hmm. And it is just a clear sweeping judgment when it's made, and it's probably going to be negative, and you're probably going to be scared when talking to him and all this stuff. So who the hell wants to talk to him?
Right. It's very intimidating. It's
and then here's my latest kind of understanding of this, is that interpretation of God is at such a low level. It's like a third grade interpretation of God's personality.
It's evolutionarily.
Nonetheless, but what I'm saying is that it's almost insulting to one's intelligence, and it's insulting for me to another person's intelligence if they're willing to accept the third grade definition of God and not go out and find one on their own.
Right, or to accept belief in a God who's less than themselves.
Right. I mean, have you thought of a loving God? Maybe that's the option, not just a vengeful judge. Right.
Right. Well, you think of yourself and the relationships you want for yourself. You want to have loving relationships.
Right. And weren't we talking about a story last night that we'll probably get into on a live stream, is that at that wedding of Cana, did it not give such insight into the loving personality of God the Father? It's like, yeah, man, take that wine. You guys deserve to celebrate. I love you guys. Yeah. And I'll give you the good wine too.
Right. Made sure it was good wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah. But that notion of that loving personality, and some of us are blessed to have a loving parent, and some too. Wow, man, congratulations! But or a loving grandparent, or a friend we can confide in, someone that can at least kind of plant those seeds of what unconditional love can feel like.
Yes. Right.
And then when we do find it in God, we recognize it.
Yes. Right. Right. So this gets back to the idea of having a relationship with an invisible presence. Accepting the reality of that possibility.
Well, what about when, but what about when you like, let's say you're hanging out with a friend, or even like you're in town and we're hanging out. When you leave, I'll miss you. But it'll be like, you're not here present, but I'll still remember what we did and what we could do and what we might think about to talk. I'll be like, oh, I'd want to bring that up to Chuck. You know what I mean?
Well, and we can talk, we can chat.
Yeah.
We can
text each other.
We can text, we can talk. And, one of the interesting things I've discovered about this technology, our communication technology, is when I'm texting with somebody, it doesn't matter how far away they are. I have some friends on the other side of the planet. When I'm texting with them, I feel their presence.
I agree.
Just like they're in the room with me.
I can hear the tonality in the text even.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's expression and qualities. And then even more so if you're talking on the phone or doing a video conference.
Right.
But we can feel presence at a distance.
And now, have you been in the situation where, like, I get this all the time, where I'll feel someone's presence and then all of a sudden they're texting me? Or I'll feel someone's presence, then I go on Facebook and they had just left a comment on one of my posts or something like that.
Yeah, you get it like a clue or an intuition or,
and I feel it's like
a hit of that.
Well, I feel like since if we're all personalities born into the adjutant mind spirits, right? We're in the mother. It's almost like this arena of mind that we all kind of partake in. Yeah. And as we like raise our hands, we know when someone else is kind of raising their hands or like signaling us or trying to contact us.
Right. I think it's the attention. Attention is sort of the big factor in that.
Okay.
At least that's one of the ways I think about it. So like in a texting conversation where you feel the other person's presence, you're both giving each other, you're giving them your attention, they're giving you yours. You know what I mean? There's a activation of attention on each other.
Sure.
And even if there's a break in the conversation, that feeling of their presence doesn't diminish because the attention is there.
Sure.
It's like it's sort of like logging on if there's like a circuit or something.
Yeah.
You're logging on to the presence of the other person by giving them your attention.
Okay.
So in those situations you talked about, that person was giving you their attention and you didn't even realize it. But you felt something.
Yeah,
you got a hit of that, and then you went and looked, and oh yeah, look,
there they are.
Look at this, right?
Yeah.
So there's in the paper in the URANTIA book where they talk about personality survival. They give a list of characteristics of personality. They say you can't really define personality. Personality is kind of a mysterious thing in reality. But they have made observations about personality.
Okay.
And one of these observations that I think is very crucial and interesting happens to be number 11 on the list, where they say that personality responds directly to other personality presence.
Right.
So personality has this inherent capacity, apart from our senses, apart from our eyesight, apart from our minds and our thinking. Personality itself has an inherent capacity to respond directly to other personality presence. And the reason I think why this is so important is this is what enables us to feel the presence of deity.
Sure.
Because the presence of deity, the presence of God, is universe-wide. Like there's nowhere in the universe
omnipresent.
It's omnipresent. There's nowhere in the universe that the presence of God doesn't exist. There's nowhere you can hide from them. It's not, you can't like find a little corner over there where it's really dark and shadowy.
Trust me, I've tried.
God's presence won't be there. It'll be there. It'll be no matter where you go. It'll be there, right? So that to me is sort of the key that unlocks that understanding. So this idea of having a relationship with an invisible personality presence. I mean, for me, the first was like just accepting the idea that it's possible.
Right.
And this is a key to understanding how that could be possible.
Okay.
And and it really uses the same mechanism that we experience like in a text conversation.
Yeah.
And in the same way, it's initiated and maintained by attention.
Right.
So if you sit down and you simply give your attention to God, it's going to do the same thing.
You're texting God.
It's texting God, basically. Yeah. You're calling God up or something. Okay, God, I'm giving you my attention. I know you're there. And the other piece in that is that we can always, I think, trust that God wants to give us his or her attention, depending on the deity we're talking about.
Right, which divinity we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, and it's difficult for a human to decipher between the divinity that they're interacting with, I feel like. Not to say that one would be channeling different personalities or whatnot. But as we just started the show out on, I mean, there's a multiplicity of divinity out there that might not be exactly easy for us all to discern who we're dealing with, right?
Right.
That's why it's kind of nice to leave it up to divinity to sort it out, but you still have the sincere, honest intention with your relationship.
And I think you're right. And our way of expressing that is our gift of attention.
Right. Right.
So we take a moment, or even while we're busy doing other things, we can still give our attention to God. You know, they talk about Jesus, how he had unbroken communion.
Right, right.
Even when he was going through everything he was going through.
Yeah, well, I think the unnatural part of his unbroken communion would be that when things are bad, you need to commune. When things are good, you need to commune, right? Yeah. You know, a lot of the
it always makes things better.
Well, the thinking is like, oh, things are good. I'm good now. But it's only when it's an emergency do I need to commune.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of short-sighted. Right. Or you're missing the opportunity.
Well, I feel like, look, when good things happen to me, I call my mom and let her know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You want companionship.
Yeah, you want to share good stuff with people.
You want companionship in that experience.
Sure.
So that's what God is offering us all the time, is that just superb quality of companionship. Mm. You know, like the best friend you could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. Can just like be with you all the time. Mm-hmm. If we just simply give that possibility our attention. Mm-hmm. Right. But then there's ways of strengthening that and making it stronger, making the feeling of that presence stronger. Mm-hmm. You know, so like in the Jesus' second discourse of religion, he says the important thing is to grow in your ability to feel the presence of God. You know, your theories about God, you know, might be helpful. That's okay. But what's really important is you're growing in your capacity to feel the presence of God.
Yeah. Now, how much of that is maybe some of our genetic difficulties? Like we have such I would say like physical issues here as all of us as humans.
Well,
not
we got
like some
all
are
this,
perfect
like,
and some are. We're like, as the Urantia book says, we're so electrochemically infused.
Right.
It's
protoplasmic.
Well, it's hard because we get pulled by these magnetic pulls. And it's like hard to like get your head back in it.
Not to mention all the distractions. And necessities.
Yeah.
Of just life and going through the day and everything that entails.
So I feel like one of the strengths from Jesus's life that I can really take is that he took the time to sit down, sit aside, right? Even after that wedding at Cana, he was up on the roof, right?
It's like, oh my God.
Just thinking, I need to get back to source here, right? Yeah. Get back to what the equilibrium of spirit is in order to move forward properly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that takes maturity and wisdom. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen right away. That's not a natural reaction, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe for some, and God bless you guys. Whoever has that, good for you. But like.
Mm-hmm. But even, yes. Yeah, no, I totally agree. But I think even beyond that, what they're encouraging us to accept or try to develop an experience is this idea that it can be all the time.
Yeah, unbroken.
Yeah, unbroken communion. That's the phrase they use. So they talk about prayer and they talk about worship, which are two different kind of ways of engaging with God and the presence of God and developing a relationship with God. And those are obviously practical on the one hand and just like uplifting in terms of our sense of destiny and what worship is expansive.
Yeah.
Of our vision or our sense of reality and what's possible.
Yeah, you're kind of tuning into what could be.
Whereas the prayer is more like consulting or consultation or just like, I need a friend to talk this over with.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
It's more conversational.
Yeah. And then communion.
Communion kind of bridges them together in a way, because I think with communion, it's just that sense of being with.
Yeah, just hanging out. No pressure,
so
just hanging out.
So in both cases, prayer and worship, you're being with God, but in a kind of a different way.
Interesting.
Right. Like in one place in the book, they talk about how we worship the Father, we pray to the Son, and then we work out the details of our day-to-day life with the ministries of the infinite spirit, which would be the angels and the mother spirit. So there's this kind of threefold division again.
Yeah.
So we worship the Father, but then we pray to the Son, but then we work out the details with the ministries of the third.
Where the rubber hits the road in reality.
Like,
area.
okay, what are we actually going to do today?
Yeah.
So like, in the prayer to the Son, it would be more like, establishing the values and the goals and, through our own initiation and use of language.
I will say yes. And prayer to the Son for me has always been an appeal for comfort.
Well, they refer to the Spirit of Truth as a comforter.
It's a request for comfort. It's usually when I'm in a confused state or there's a fear there that isn't recognized. So it might be embarrassment of the fear or whatever.
Right.
But there's a need for sincere comfort here. Please.
Well, yeah, help me to
work this out, man. Yeah.
Get up and, they say he'll restore self-respect.
Absolutely. That's
to those who really desire for that. But the thing that's so interesting about that is, in terms of praying to the Son, that whole idea, if we interpret the Son as being Jesus, is that he has been one of us.
Yeah.
He's lived the human life. He's mastered the human life. They refer to him as the master. They don't refer to him as the master for no reason. They refer to him as the master because he truly mastered the experience of being human.
And in the URANTIA book, they don't call anybody else a master.
Yeah.
Just him.
So if we think of this like as a cosmic apprenticeship,
right.
Just being a human being as a kind of as an introduction to universe reality, but also kind of a cosmic apprenticeship, we can think of Jesus as our master.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're learning from him. He sent a teacher to teach us.
We learn from him.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing he said was, follow me.
Yes.
Right. I'll show you the way.
Well, I always think of when he met Nathaniel for the first time.
Yeah. He said,
what did he say? Finally, a genuine Israelite in who there is no deceit. Follow me.
Follow me. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and as you said, the Spirit of Truth is always saying, this is the way to follow.
Yes. Right. So when we're trying to work out a difficult decision or trying to recover from something that happened that maybe didn't turn out too well or whatever it is, we're mapping out our options for how to proceed. So first of all, we need to kind of pick ourselves up, if that's the case, muster the courage to
girdle our
right, right. But then we still have decisions to make, right? So typically what we have to do is okay, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. Just trying to find the best way forward. So we have this concept of the Father's will is always the best way forward. Right. By definition.
Absolutely.
And the fact that the Father has already figured that out for us, we don't necessarily know what it is, but he's ready to gift that to us, right? But in order for us to receive that, we have to do some effort on our part. We have to at least consider the options. We have to have some possibilities to choose from.
Sure.
It's not just going to drop into our heads with no effort, right? Because if you think of God as like a good parent, a parent, he's not going to give the game away. He's just not going to just, You got
to earn your experience points.
The whole point of this lifetime is to gain experience.
Yeah.
Exactly. So our gift to God is our experience. Because that's the one thing God can't have except through us.
Yeah. And the pre-personal state of our thought adjuster is needing us to do that.
Exactly. And is there and ready to lead us in that effort on our part. So when we make that effort, then we can, so the idea of prayer in that context, like with Jesus. So Jesus is the master. He knows all about being human. So he knows all about our situation. He understands us inside and out, right? And then we can talk the situation over with him.
Right.
But I think it's important that we do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we, verbalize.
Yeah, it's almost like I know this sounds maybe impersonal, but it seems to me a little bit like it's an instrument. And if you're not practicing with that instrument, how could you make such beautiful tones and stuff like that inspires others to go towards truth, beauty, and goodness?
Right.
But you got to put in the time.
Yeah.
Just for anything that you want to be effective in.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And if you hang out with somebody a lot, like a close friend, and you really admire and respect them, you're going to take on some of the qualities.
Yeah, you'll be influenced.
You'll be influenced by them, or a mentor, or an older adult, or a teacher, or even your parents, whatever. People that manifest qualities that you admire, if you hang out with them, then you're going to, kind of take some of that on yourself.
Sure.
And the same thing happens with God.
Yeah.
So the whole idea, part of the big thing is to become more godlike. They even put it in those terms. And the only way to do that is to have a living relationship with God. That's the only way you can really know God. So, it occurred to me, one day when I was thinking about this idea of the Father's will, Father's will, that's great, in theory. I grasp that in concept that's the best thing to do, right? But how do I know what that is without actually knowing the Father?
Exactly.
And if you don't actually know the Father, then you'll default to
your will.
You'll default to conscience, maybe.
Sure.
Or contemporary moral standards in the world around you. Some external idea about the mores, what you should be doing or ought to be doing.
Or what happened in the past even too that was glorified and in stone and has not changed.
Yeah, right. Those become external standards. But maybe none of those things really are the Father's will. Maybe there's something even better.
I know.
Right?
There's something just for you,
something
buddy.
More exciting, more expansive, more of an opportunity for service.
Well, I really like what you're hinting on is, this is something that's just driving through my spiritual development right now is the upside down unnaturalness of what it means to become truly spirit-led and spirit-born compared to the material kingdom, and why Jesus was seen as beside himself.
Yeah, right.
And why people couldn't understand him. They could not understand him because they didn't put in the time that he put in with the Father.
Yeah.
He knew his personality from hanging out with him. And he's like, yo, this is my guy. This is the way he acts. And they're like, no, that's not what it says in the scriptures. How dare you think that way? And he's like, okay, do you know him? Because I do.
Yeah.
We were just hanging out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just showing you what he showed me.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is such a cool thing.
Yeah.
So as a Paradise Creator son, he has that same relationship.
Yeah.
And
with
then
us.
The relationship with
God the Father,
with Jesus, and with Michael.
Is it almost?
And then that extends through.
So it's like when Jesus was on the planet, and he's saying, "Okay, look, I just talked to God. He's the man. He's awesome. He loves us all. He loves you." And he was saying this. Then when we go into deep communion and worship with the Spirit of Truth, is he kind of like saying, hey, this is God, and this is what he's kind of doing for you too? Like it's a 3-person conversation type of thing?
Well,
is he mediating?
Let me go back to this thing I started to read in the beginning.
Okay.
Because I think it addresses what you're talking about. So this, again, is right from the beginning of the book. It says, we are fully cognizant of the difficulties of our assignment. We recognize the impossibility of fully translating the language of the concepts of divinity and eternity into the symbols of the language of the finite concepts of the mortal mind. But we know there dwells within the human mind, a fragment of God, and that there sojourns with the human soul the Spirit of truth. And we further know that these spirit forces conspire to enable material man to grasp the reality of spiritual values and to comprehend the philosophy of universe meanings. And one of the things that struck me in this statement, I'll just go back and point it out because when you read it through quickly, you might not realize this, but there's very careful use of language here. They say there dwells within the human mind a fragment of God. And then they say there sojourns with the human soul, the Spirit of truth. So there's deity within, there's the presence of God within us, but then there's also this companion spirit of Jesus, our master son, master human being, with us. As the Spirit of truth.
Right.
So we have deity presence within us and we have deity presence with us.
Right.
And the two are designed to work together. They're gifted to work together. And that's one of the to me, one of the biggest revelations in the URANTIA book is that we're sort of caught in the middle of this deity sandwich.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like I look at it like making cider, actually, where it's like you have this evolutionary product, the apple that you juice, right? And you have this juice, but then in order to transcend it, into the spirit that you can consume,
Mm-hmm.
you add yeast and you add yeast nutrients, right? So it's kind of like the yeast is the father of the spirit that can transform us into something new. But the yeast nutrients is something that kind of brings it into integration for us that we can start to understand and be there present.
Manifestation.
Yeah, yeah.
Manifestation.
It's feeding that knowledge of understanding the yeast's work.
Right. So there's always this flow from potential to actual.
Yeah, yeah.
That the book talks about, from possibility to manifestation.
Yeah.
And that flow of reality is what our will sort of has command over, potentially, within our own lives and to whatever reach our actions have into the world. We kind of have our finger on the switch.
Cool.
as to whether that happens or not.
All right.
So this flow of potential into actual, of possibility into manifestation, is all tied up with this idea of the divinity within us and then the divinity that's with us.
Right.
So to make that connection between the two, like we're getting the inner sense of possibility, but maybe out here in the world, we don't really know how to do that.
Sure.
Or we lack whatever, we feel like we need to access another level of worldly connected sense of possibility. And I think this Jesus can give us that.
Yes.
Or at least he can encourage us. He can be with us.
I feel like there's such a social component with Jesus.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's like a brother.
He's a brother who's like been in every social environment that he can give you tips on how to get through it in a positive win-win-win scenario.
Yes, right. And so he kind of, in order to make that relationship happen between the Father within us and the Jesus with us, that our will governs that, our decisions.
That's opening the door.
That's the opening of the door.
Right.
And everything that follows from that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is such sound advice for everyone at home.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I think we can learn so much from Jesus now and from the Spirit of truth. And thank God that we have these opportunities.
So just to expand a little bit on this idea of how Jesus stands at the door of our lives, stands at the door of our hearts, stands at the door of our minds, even literally of our homes, I'd like to read the sort of the expanded version of that statement that Jesus made please. From the book. And what he says here is, he says, "Behold, I stand at the door of men's hearts and knock. And if any man will open to me, I will come in and sup with him." I mean, think about that.
Having dinner.
How social that is. How okay, let's hang out, right?
Yeah.
I will come in and sup with him and will feed him with the bread of life. So while we offer him our home, and try to make that inviting for him, he's going to give us this thing, this bread of life.
He's bringing dinner.
Which is not physical bread, but the bread that makes us real and more in touch with our true cosmic potential.
Yeah.
And how
that spirit sustenance.
The spirit sustenance. Yeah. He'll feed us spiritually. Yeah. Right. So let me just read on. I will come in and sup with him and feed him with the bread of life, and we shall be one in spirit and purpose, and so shall we ever be brethren in the long and fruitful service of the search for the Paradise Father.
So that's our teammate going on.
So yes, exactly. So I just think this language is just so fascinating. It's so interesting. Yeah. So he's saying we shall be one in spirit and purpose. So Jesus as a paradise son of God. I mean, Jesus is the creator of our local universe, but he's actually a paradise son. He comes straight from the center of reality. So he's going to join with us. He's offering to okay, let's work together. Let's have the same, be of the same spirit and the same purpose. Let's
be on the same team.
Let's be on the same team. Let's share purpose. And so shall we ever be brethren. It will be like brother, sister. We have this relationship, even though in some sense he's like our creator father in local universe terms. In relation to the Father, universal Father, he's kind of more like a brother. right? But we can find the Father in him, right? So he says, we shall ever be brethren in the long and fruitful service. So he's talking about service here. We can serve together, long and fruitful service of the search for the Paradise Father. So this idea that we have an eternal service of ever greater discovery of the infinite nature of the Father is like, just so kind of super exciting.
It's like, exciting.
Yeah, we never kind of reach the end of this path of ascension and progression.
Yeah.
And we'll be with him. He's offering to be with us in that service. So the idea that having a greater experience of God is a service.
I like that.
I like that too, because it means that then we can reveal to each other, like what you discover about, I look in your eyes and I see God's presence in you. That tells me something about God that I didn't know before, right? Yeah. And we can each offer that to each other. Yeah. And if we can imagine looking into Jesus's eyes,
it'll change your whole afterlife.
It'll change your life. Right. They even say that. If he smiled on somebody.
One wink from Jesus will change your whole afterlife.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So anyway, I just think all of that's very beautiful.
That is beautiful. And it's empowering and inspiring. And so I really want to thank you for sharing that with us. And, I invite you to share some more with us in the future.
We'll continue this. We're just kind of getting started.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. Just so you guys know, we are just getting started. There's going to be more live streams, just way more content that's coming out. The more that you like and share and support us, the more we can do this great service of sharing our relationship with God the Father, with all of you guys and our whole family, brothers and sisters. So thank you so much for being with us. Please come back next time. God bless. Thank you. Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks for having me.